And welcome, oh my goodness, America here and Vienna. And it's always marvelous to see such a great participation from all around the world. Thank you so much. So we have 20 minutes today, followed by a 10-minute Q&A for those who wish. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Paul to you. You will have seen his biography in the invitation, and indeed notification of the book that he wrote last year, Go Tech or Go Extinct. And Paul has come to a number of forum breakfasts in the past when we used to do breakfasts. And of course, today was supposed to be a forum breakfast, and we've very quickly pivoted it to a digital event. Now, Paul, your book, I think, is a tremendous read, I might say so, which is obviously why I've invited you to speak to Forum. It's very detailed, very well argued, but I would say also it's a very practical guide with steps on how to proceed and how to remove the obstacles that companies put up in front of themselves in many sort of way. And the reason I say that is because the central tenet of the book is the need for established companies to acquire tech disruptors. The first statement I want to ask of you is, you state that all companies will eventually become tech companies. So could you expand on that for us, please?
Sure, thank you, Simon. Good to be here today. The reason that I say that is every industry is becoming a tech industry. If you just look at automotive, you can't do much today in the automotive industry without having a technology perspective on it, whether it's the body of the automobile itself or the software, the chips, and the communication, connectivity. It's all going to electric, self-driving cars. It's going to happen faster than we think. So the automotive industry is effectively a tech industry. The metal, the aluminum, the rubber, tires and so on that we're familiar with will become less and less important. Look at the food industry. Food industry is completely transforming, as I say, in a similar way to the horse and cart transforming to the automobile back in the early 1900s. Everything from the actual protein, whether it's animal protein or plant protein, is changing. It's changing in terms of plant-based meat, which you will have heard about with Beyond Meat and Possible Foods, for example, but also lab meat and lab fish, which are coming. And that is a total game changer, as I talk about in the book, with regard to the entire ecosystem of farming and farmers and animals and feed and all the electricity and water and power that's required, as well as, frankly, the methane gas that's emitted from cows. All of these things will change within the next 10 years. And we could go on. Finance, financial services, completely changing. Most of us have heard about fintech if you're not in fintech in some way. I read an article recently saying that every company will be a fintech company because of payments, insurance. It's all data and information. And that is inevitably going to become a pure information and tech industry. So as all industries are becoming driven by technology, the companies that are operating within those industries who are delivering goods and services and solutions to the customer, they have to become a tech company, or as I say, fully technology enabled. Amazon, for example, some would call a pure tech company. Actually, Amazon is a retailer. So Amazon enables the delivery of products and goods to people as a retailer would, but it is completely technology enabled. And that's why people call Amazon a tech company. But it, in fact, is a bit of a hybrid. And I think as we go forward over the next 5 or 10 years, as technology grows exponentially, we're going to see a similar pattern where many tech companies today have to become a little bit more non-tech, and non-tech companies are absolutely going to have to become a lot more tech.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Thank you so much. Actually, I'll come on, if I may, in a moment to the threat of Amazon, but the threat of Amazon with particular regard to Walmart, about which you write in your book. But I just wanted to ask you that your book focuses pretty much on established companies, if you like, but large, pretty significant SME and major corporations. And you wrote that book last year. Now, of course, all of us, whatever size of business we've got, have had to pivot digitally. And so that, the future is tech has come down the line to smaller companies very, very quickly. And I'm just interested, I know from the RSVPs that I've seen and the people I can see on the screen, that a number of us run what you might call relatively SME companies. What's the future for us? I mean, I'm very quickly realizing, and have done, I hope, in time, that the digital offering is super, super important, and we just got to get better and better and better at that. What's your advice to your clients currently?
SMEs have a different challenge because they can grow naturally based on going from a smaller number. If you're starting at 10 billion, it's difficult to get to 15. Whereas if you're starting from 5 or 10 million or 100 million, it's relatively easier to double or triple that simply through old-fashioned marketing or old-fashioned ingenuity and entrepreneurship. So the challenge is different. And nevertheless, the competition is still going to be tech-enabled in some way. So the smaller company has an opportunity to take advantage of technology beyond, as I would say, having to do with acquisition. I don't think smaller companies have to acquire, a tech or a digital company or anything like that, but they have to be clever in partnerships. It's one of the best ways that a small company can scale. I don't want to spend too much time on, outside of the theme, but small companies, the ones that have gone or grown very quickly, are the ones that have been able to partner very well, strategically partner. And I'd say that today, the fastest, best way to partner, if you're not a tech company, but you're an SME, is to think about those software companies or those platform businesses that would love to have a relationship with you that's a little bit more exclusive than a normal, supplier relationship, that can take you where you want to get to faster, which probably fundamentally is more customers and better customers who are paying a higher price. So don't know if that helps, but.
No, absolutely, and of course, some of that sensible advice is within the book. Let's come back to the established companies, if you like, and it's always interesting to look at actual cases. And of course, you talk about the blockbuster Netflix scenario. Maybe just talk us quickly through the mistakes and successes that were involved there.
Yeah, it's interesting. People say you don't learn from history, and it's so true. The blockbuster Netflix story is well known now, and there was an opportunity that Blockbuster had to acquire Netflix before Netflix is anything like it is today. And Blockbuster didn't make that move. At the time, it had, I don't know how many, over 5,000 retail stores, was the clear market leader, and just didn't feel it needed to do anything. In fact, I see that all the time today. In most large companies, they don't really feel they need to do anything because it's hard for them to imagine a Netflix coming out of nowhere, a Netflix who is open to selling themselves, a Netflix who is feeling, we're not sure we're going to do this. We're not sure we're going to be able to make it. And I would say most of the great tech companies today had a point in time in which they felt, we're not sure it's going to work. Elon Musk says very openly today that he wasn't sure if SpaceX was going to make it. He wasn't sure if Tesla was going to make it. There were a couple of months when Tesla was a week or two away from bankruptcy. The same thing was Amazon. I think it was 2000. And Amazon, they had a working capital hitch, and they were a month or two away from bankruptcy if they didn't, I think, secure in the end a $600 million loan. So the message is that while the tech disruptor is in fact able to disrupt, they also have their own moments of fragility. They have their own moments of worry. Yeah. And that's what we saw with Blockbuster Netflix. And what Netflix did was overcome that. And that's also why I talk about mindset being by far the most important source of power and potency for any company, but certainly these large incumbents, to believe that you can do this. And I'll mention Walmart in that context in a minute. But Blockbuster just didn't see it, didn't have it. They weren't concerned. Netflix did. Netflix put together an amazing plan that leveraged technology, and it continues to do so today. Yeah. And many of these companies, these tech companies who are disruptors, they will get acquired for a number that at the time seems absurd, but only later in time do we see that it was a bargain. And I think about, in that case, Facebook acquiring Instagram for $1 billion. I think it's a bit less than that. But at the time, there were a lot of commentators saying, it's crazy to acquire a company with 13 employees and zero revenue for $1 billion. Well, today, Instagram is probably worth a couple $100 billion. YouTube was acquired by Google for $1.65 billion. Same thing at the time. That was a crazy price to pay, people were saying, for a company that lost a lot of money. Today, YouTube is worth a couple $100 billion, if not more. There are many case studies like that. And I could go on and on that topic, but
well, let me take you to the Walmart example.
Yeah.
Because I love that story in your book, where they made that acquisition. They thought ahead. So talk us through that very quickly.
Yeah, so that's still today among my very favorite case studies, because Walmart was under pressure back in 2015 from Amazon. I mean, Walmart was the big kahuna, the big gorilla of U.S. retail by far. And Amazon, we forget now, was just a little bookseller. It had acquired some offline bookshops to build its online book platform, and it was the leader in books. But many of us didn't really expect Amazon to do much more than books, but it did little by little. It acquired Zappos, the shoe company, and got into some other areas. And before you knew it, Amazon was into general commerce and general retail, not just books. Walmart didn't really see it coming. Walmart did have many attempts at Walmart.com for its own e-commerce site. It was not successful, couldn't do it for all the same reasons that most incumbents are not successful with an in-house only project where they're really trying to be disruptive or innovative. It just doesn't work. Walmart, to their credit, and especially Doug McMillon, the CEO, to his credit, they recognized the challenge and they decided, and it's just a decision. It all boils down to a decision. That's all it is. And they made the decision to acquire Jet.com for $3.3 billion. It was a company that had been set up 18 months earlier. It had relatively little revenue. So they acquired the company at a 13 times revenue multiple. And, at the time, I say in the book, I fell off my chair when I read about the deal. I couldn't believe that a conservative company like Walmart, that the board would agree to pay a 13 times revenue multiple for an e-commerce startup when the average multiple in the retail industry was about 0.5 times revenue. So this wasn't a 30 million, it's a $3.3 billion deal. And what that deal did was, first of all, fix the Walmart.com site. So it was the team, and this is something that's taken for granted when it comes to what we call a techquisition. It isn't just the technology or the solution or the product or the platform or the intellectual property that a company is buying. It's the know-how, it's the people, it's the talent. That is what makes a technology company. Technology company is changing its product every day. They're coding every day. They're taking feedback. They're pivoting. They're collecting high quality data and interpreting that data to make the next pivot. And what Jet.com allowed Walmart to do was not only fix their website, Walmart.com, and they did that very quickly within a year. And the way I describe the ROI on that deal is that Walmart paid $3.3 billion, but 18 months later, Walmart had created $60 billion in market value, almost entirely due to that transaction. But Walmart also acquired another 4 or 5 smaller digital companies. And Mark LaHore, who founded and ran Jet.com, became the head of Walmart's e-commerce, where he has been ever since. And it started to change the entire mindset of Walmart. And they went on to acquire Flipkart in India in 2018 for $16 billion, also at a 6 or 7 times revenue multiple. And Walmart today is basically a tech company. I mean, they are innovating across the entire value chain. They filed for patents in about 16, 17 different areas, including virtual reality shopping and blockchain-enabled trucking fleets. It's just amazing what Walmart has done. And what I often say to people is, if Walmart can do it, any company can do it. It's just a decision. And credit to Doug McMillon and his team and the board for making the decision and just getting on with it. The challenge, and I listen to the book, all these different obstacles, and I'm sure you want to talk about that in a bit. Yeah. But they're obstacles like any other obstacle with any other problem that a business has. They're not any different. They're only as different as you make them out to be.
Yeah, sure. And you lead into that by putting the premium today, which I guess has always been there, but really now is underscored, on imagination and creativity now being the key. And you make this point that there's been a paradigm shift where capital is not the lever that it used to be. Capital now needs the team, not the team, the capital, if you like. I'm sure it's not quite as clean as that, but I get the point.
Yeah, I mean, this I could go on this topic. I get really excited by it because we've been living in a 35-year bond bubble of declining interest rates since 1980. So we've had a series of lower lows and lower highs. If you look at the 10-year Treasury, and now we have zero interest rates, we have negative interest rates. That's probably not going to change for a while. And I would refer everyone here to have a look at, if you're interested in this topic, the book Price of Tomorrow, because he goes into this, which I only recently found out about a couple of months ago. Great book, where he also addresses this point about deflation, that technology advancement, the exponential growth of technology, is a deflationary experience. And it's one reason why the governments have had to pump out, the central banks, so much capital. The stimulus funding is not going to end probably when the pandemic ends for all sorts of reasons. So if we come back to this point about capital being the lever, well, we've had private equity grow to a $2 trillion, if not more, dollar industry ever since KKR went down to that company in Georgia. I think did a mortgage for $70 million. That has grown into a massive industry. But a major cause of that has been the decline in interest rates. That's probably not going to continue over the next 10 years. And when you also look at the power of technology companies, it's not technology, but the company that has the people, the team, the talent, the ideas. When you look at an established company, just take a number, take 50 million, that would have that can leverage itself up with 50 million of debt and achieve that mortgage effect on the equity, versus acquiring the right technology company that's the right fit at the right part of the value chain, and that deal's done in the right way when it comes to terms and arrangements and incentives. It's much more powerful as a lever than taking on debt, or frankly, most other things that a company could do to generate operating leverage. So if we're talking about revenue growth and increasing margins, what are the things that you could do? Smaller companies have an array of things they can do. So I'm really addressing the larger established companies, incumbent companies. Yeah. There's a limit to what they can do. And capital only gets you so far today, especially today, because capital is so cheap. It's almost free. But buying the right tech company is not free. It isn't necessarily easy. It can be. It isn't easy. It's hard to find. It's hard to do to get it just right. But when you do, there's nothing more powerful than that. So I could talk for a long time about it.
Yes. Well, we're just coming to the close of our 20 minutes, and there's a series of questions coming up, so I'll put those to you shortly. But just to finish from my point of view, the book, you take us through great detail, great stories. It's very interesting, and then you wrap up with the techquisition, the word that you've requisitioned, and you have the 12 steps of techquisition, and then also, which I really enjoyed, was you then also list the top 11 concerns expressed for those companies who feel that they can't successfully invest or acquire a tech company, and you really guide people through that. So may I urge everybody to get this book. And in fact, Paul has very kindly suggested that everybody who's listening in today, if you send me your address, I will forward it on to Paul, and his office will send you a copy of that book. So Paul, can I move us quickly to the questions that I see coming up here? And the first question comes from Paul Epping, who's in Dubai. Paul, we're going to take you off mute now. Where are you? Can we see you? Can you wave at us, Paul?
There we go.
Yeah, we've got you. Could you put your question, please, to T'other Paul?
There are many questions, but what I would like to talk about. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. So there are a couple of things here, and especially what Jeff Booth is talking about is scary. And it is scary
Jeff
because
Booth being the price of tomorrow, just for everybody to know that.
The price of tomorrow, yes. Because the economists at the moment don't have an answer to that. So what we have seen during the COVID crisis is that people all of a sudden work from home, the Zooms of this era. And no transportation, people are not driving around. And that had a major effect on real estate, major effect on taxi drivers, major effect on all kind of other things, and that is a kind of an example of a deflationary effect, because what are going real estate owners do with the offices, where people in the offices are talking about, hey, we don't need that much space anymore. It is just an example. And this is a cascading effect to all kind of other areas. And that is what Jeff means with the deflationary character of technology, because it's all due to technology.
So,
do you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think we've got to be careful not to go overboard. We're still human. We're human beings, and we're very social, which explains the rise of the social networks, which will just continue. Another great documentary, The Social Dilemma, I would encourage everyone to watch. So we're social beings. We're gonna come out of this, whenever we do next year, desperate, I think, to go to restaurants, to go to bars, to get on a plane, to travel again, and to be with each other in buildings. I cannot underestimate the value that comes from, certainly in business, and I'd say equally in science. My father was head of R&D for a pharmaceutical company, and you'd think, well, these are scientists, they're in the lab, they've got heads down. He said, look, the thing we're trying to achieve is getting the scientists in toxicology to talk to the ones in microbiology and molecular biology and the clinicians who are doing phase 1 trials. We want them all to talk and exchange ideas and to share, because that's where true innovation comes from. And there is a limit in what we can achieve with Zoom compared to being live in real time. That's not going to go away. We will, having said that, now that we have 5G and the iPhone 12 is an interesting thing to watch, is the catalyst, certainly for 5G, especially in the US with Verizon announcing a national launch. 5G is going to allow for holograms and a whole new experience with AR and VR. That's coming soon, in AR for sure, and then VR and holograms in the next 2 or 3 years. That will also have a deflationary effect, and that's going to have an impact, as you were saying, Paul, on commercial real estate.
But also, Paul, the marginal costs of supply will get close to zero because it's digital. You can scale. Actually, it is easier for Uber to add a new car to it than or Airbnb to add a new room, than Marriott to add a new room. They have to build a new room, and Airbnb is just one button that you have to enter.
Well, this is what happened with Thomas Cook, by the way, is another example, which is not in the book. There's so many things that have happened since then. Thomas Cook, a very large UK-based travel agency that had been around for 150 years, over 10 billion euros in revenue, who we talked to, by the way, several times. They were at a certain level intrigued with the idea of a techquisition, but not everybody on the executive committee was. And they were more concerned with what's right in front of them, as I'd say is the case with most executives. Humans think in a linear way, not exponentially. And so Thomas Cook executives, and I'll put a name on this because it's worth the example, and this is presumably more or less in confidence, they struggled to be able to deal with their immediate problem, which was a financial one, which was refinancing their main credit facility, at the same time as having to deal with a strategic challenge, which was, oh my goodness, we've got 500 stores that people used to go into to book their holiday, but they don't do that anymore because they can do it here. At a touch of a button, they can book their holiday. There's no need for these stores or for the employees in the stores. And they just couldn't, as a company, achieve both of those things simultaneously. And as a result, they are no longer with us. The company went bankrupt. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to see. I see it and I hear it in conversations I have all the time with companies. And, it's a sensitive thing because they have to see it for themselves. If the decision makers at a company do not for themselves acknowledge the existential threats that are around them, they're probably not going to change. All we can do is help support them, answer some questions, give guidance and counsel. And then when it comes, in our case, to actually executing on a project, and of course we can do that, but it all starts with the decision. And so the comment about deflation and so on, I totally agree with that. That it's almost obvious if you go back 20, 30 years. and see what's happening.
So Alain Bruhard is just, and I think probably almost close to closing now, but has a side point that, you know, for techquisition in corporations, what is the main driver, mindset or cash? And of course, in your book on techquisition, there you are, you know, discussing how companies, as you've just alluded to there, find it so difficult, the obstacles to set aside, to jump across. But it's about mindset, isn't it? As far as
it's all mindset. It's, you know, cash is an easy excuse, of which there are, you know, hundreds.
Yes.
There is always an excuse. There's always a reason we don't have enough cash. We've only got 10 million on our balance sheet, or we're capped out on our debt capacity. That's the beginning of the end. That's the beginning of the end. We have had several conversations, as we are now, with clients where they don't have a lot of cash in the balance sheet, but what they do have is a very good brand, a very good reputation, channel to market, millions of customers, commercial know-how, relationships with regulators, relationships with government decision makers, systems for knowing how to recruit and keep employees. The startups, these disruptors, they don't have all of that. So we're talking to them about deals that can be done that may be a joint venture. It might be an exclusive partnership that doesn't require cash, but it can allow for some equity ownership and over time a path to control. And very often in these joint ventures, sometimes you create enough cash from the joint business plan to make the cash acquisition over time.
But you make the point also, you make the point in the book as well, that the market providers understand that and therefore they will deliver the cash.
Absolutely. You know, the markets, especially today, where liquidity is not a problem. I mean, there are other problems, but liquidity is not one of them. It's astounding the amount of cash that's available today. And if you are a listed company and you're not on the brink of bankruptcy, you have so many options available to you to raise the cash you need for the right deal. And the right deal is the one that the market wants. It's the one that the market believes. And the market's very smart most of the time. The market wants a deal that's going to create value and deliver for the shareholders. It doesn't have to happen overnight. But in most of the case studies we talk about techquisition, there's an immediate increase in the share price that pays for the deal. Because the market knows that, thank God, the company's doing that, because we know that if they don't, it's going to end up pretty bad.
Yeah, no, I really took that point from the book. And I'm just going to close with Rosalind. Where is Rosalind? Rosalind, will you come forward and ask your question? There you are. Here we are. Here's Rosalind.
Thank you for such a really exciting and engaging, thought-provoking talk. I guess the question I would have for Paul is, why does the market not see this and start to invest in companies which don't take these opportunities?
Great point. We actually just published a study on that specific point. It's on our website. It's called The Death of Value Investing. Barron's picked it up and featured this. And we're essentially saying that there is so much evidence, it's absolutely overwhelming, that if you're an investor, if you're an institutional investor, or if you want to save away for your kids for the next 20 years, there's no point to be invested in anything but tech or a company like a Walmart that has committed to becoming a tech company. There's no point, because the value investing was often based on getting in at a very low price and you get out, you exit. Or it could be based on dividends. You have a yield. Well, dividend yields are the only thing that have saved non-tech companies in the past years, because interest rates have been so low. So it hasn't been difficult to generate a 2 or 3% yield. Which Treasury. Now that's going to end. It's I could go on and on about it, but
I get it.
Great point.
That plus ESG. So I would put the two things together. I just see a big shift going forward.
I was at a restaurant last night with my daughter, and they have an entire vegan menu. And this is not a fancy restaurant. This is a simple sit-down diner. And they have a gluten-free menu and a vegan menu. And I can tell you, this did not exist 5 or 10 years ago. The world is going crazy over plant-based alternatives, gluten-free, organic, sugar-free. It's exploding. And part of that is ESG. And young people today, extends in education, all they talk about, don't keep the lights on, don't waste energy, let's eat something healthy. And these are kids, and they're talking about it every day. Of course the world's going to change, because as these kids grow up, they carry with them this concern about sustainability. So absolutely.
So Paul, thank you so much. We're there on the dot of the half hour.